Welcome to the Easeful Uplevel, where we talk all things conscious entrepreneurship, spirituality, and upleveling without stress. Together, Erin Tobias, our marketing expert, meets with Allison Borstad, our mindset expert, where we just get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, and what your next steps are. Our goal is to make it as effortless and easeful as possible, even when you're going through hard times. Our goal is to get our mindsets right and get our energy right so that we feel like we can attack anything, we can accomplish anything. Consider this your energetic upgrade of the day. We hope you love this episode. So, Erin, I've been thinking a lot about the last time we were in Sedona, and you did like a whole chakra reading on me where you literally went systematically and tuned into my various kind of like energy centers. And the heart was one that for me at the time was really standing out, that you were like really tapping into. I still remember you saying, you know, your heart is big and it's open and it's beaming, but there's still part of it that's caged, right? Or there's part of it that's holding back or covering up or just like afraid to unleash, right? And so that was really powerful for me, because I was thinking a lot about kind of the different, like, I almost want to say like a headspace that you can get into in your head. It's like a heart space that you get into, right? Where your heart, there's like different energies that your heart can be in. I mean, we talk about heartbreak, we talk about, having your heart like wounded or falling in love, or your heart bursting open, or like universal love and like your heart beaming. Like I feel like there are almost like different moods or stages of being or development of the heart. Is any of this making sense to you? Like,
no, I love that you're bringing this up, and I will share just on a personal note, one thing that I've been really encountering is the dualities of our heart spaces. I'm like in a stage where there's so many good things happening. I have like a business that's thriving. I have the most amazing clients. I feel so lit up and fulfilled by my work. I have great friends. I love where I live. Like I feel so like my heart space feels so expanded when I think about my life. I also have a lot of things going on in my family right now. So a lot of my grandparents are near the end of their lives, and there's a lot of grief that comes with that as well. So I find myself often, even throughout the day, in this space of duality. Like, how do I hold the excitement and the joy and the grief and the wounding and the sadness all at once? And oftentimes I've found it to be a little bit of a challenge, but also like it's been really interesting to have kind of both of those going on. And I find myself doing different things to support myself based off of where I am in that journey. And I think that journey for me right now, it's like a roller coaster. Like 1 hour, I'm flying high. The next hour, I'm really sad and honestly in kind of a grief mode of sadness, wounding, even, crying, like that type of thing. So I feel sometimes I'm like up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
And so it's been a different thing for me, because most of the time I'm pretty steady, right? Like in my past, I feel like I've just been very like steady, happy. So having to work with that duality on a daily basis has been a very interesting challenge to observe and to work through.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because actually the thing that I often talk about people who are deep on a self-development journey is that like when you start to really open yourself up to new things and to feeling every feeling and looking at things like the highs get higher and the lows get lower. So like when you're actually not running away from the feelings, then you feel them deeper and they hurt deeper sometimes. But then also the rewards of that, or when you are more open, right? Then like all of these beautiful moments of connection and love and all those things also open up to you. So it's interesting. I love that you mentioned like duality, or I almost think even like the capacity to have a large range and to be able to flow and toggle between the two. It's interesting that like maybe some people would consider that unstable, but I actually consider that to be like a really healed thing. Like I used to joke with people, like, can we just normalize ugly crying in your car for 10 minutes before a meeting, getting it out of your system, and then being like, I'm legitimately good and now I'm ready to go, and like, woohoo, like, let's go play in the thing. Like, and not have that be like, wow, you're so all over the place. It's just like allowing your body to have, and your mind and your spirit to have like the full expression of human experience in a day. And yeah, I think there's something actually beautiful about that duality. I feel like maybe we need both, like the contrast of it all. It's like the lows make us realize how special it is. Like if we're losing people in our life, then when we have moments of profound connection, like they feel so much more profound. And also I think we like need those moments of connection so that we don't just like totally fall into a deep dark hole either, you know what I mean, of like the grief. So I love that you brought that up, because I think yeah, like learning to like hold it all at once is a new kind of journey.
It's kind of new for me because also I think I'm someone who has in the past done a little bit of bypassing in terms of emotions. I think I've shut down a lot of those emotions that can be inconvenient, especially, you know, think about just survival mode. I was definitely in survival mode for many years, just trying to get my career started and have income coming in and, you know, just the hands that we are dealt, right? And so now at this point, I feel like it's a luxury to be able to have the time to feel and dissect a lot of the emotions that are coming my way. And I really want to feel them. Like I really want to make it a point to learn and grow from them and expand my capacity and just get all the juiciness out of the situation. Even if it doesn't feel good, I know there is value, as you were saying, and kind of expanding that heart space, expanding that potential. And I found that the heart can actually be a really beautiful tool. So I've been kind of learning that the heart can be this tool to help to kind of get yourself out of different emotional states. And I've been starting to think of it as a power center and a very strong power center. So I know a lot of our work is in the mind. We intellectualize a lot of our feelings, and I definitely have, like, you know, I can go there all day. I can intellectualize any feeling. I can pick it apart. It's one of my skills.
Mine too, girl.
But feeling it and intellectualizing it is a different thing. And so it's really been motivating to me to think of the heart as a place that can help me to get places. So, for example, this morning I woke up and I was tired. I was a little grumpy. I was running a little bit late. Like I was just kind of not in a space where I wanted to do life. And I realized, like, I think it was a Bible verse I turned on or some sort of song or something that kind of like got me out of my fog. And I realized, okay, let me approach this day with a grateful heart. And what does a grateful heart feel like? Let me do whatever I can to get my heart space into that moment of gratitude and feel that expansion. And let me make that my job for the next 5 minutes, like doing whatever I need to do to get into the grateful heart space.
Girl, you are working that Energetics of Overflow chart. My gosh.
I am. But it helps so much because then I realized, okay, now my mood has improved. I'm no longer feeling grouchy about my day. In fact, I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling curious. I'm feeling overcome by emotion of this. I mean, I was kind of brought to tears too, and in a good way, right? I'm like, wow, I live in this apartment that I love. I'm making the coffee that I enjoy. I'm going to be meeting with clients who I adore. I'm going to spend, you know, some of my day working on my own thoughts and writing my own posts and sharing my knowledge. And what a gift to just be able to have the space to do that. And then that continues to bring you up. Then I realize, oh, there's some manifestation potential here. Everyone says if you want to manifest something, get in a state of gratitude. And so then I was able to see wider potential. I mean, it's going up your chart of overflow, but it was like in the course of 5 minutes that this happened. Okay, now I can see the God working in my life. Okay, now I feel motivated. Every morning I pray to God. I say, let me do your will. Let me care for your people. Please make it very clear what I need to do. That's usually my prayer in the morning. And so now I feel motivated to say that prayer, and I feel like I have the capacity to take on that mission. And it just, honestly, this is in the course of 5 minutes. I was sitting there making my breakfast.
Yeah. Well, okay. Oh, my brain is going in so many different places because I feel like this is so important. Which we've been referencing. So we've talked about. I have this like very specific chart that I created, and we've changed the name of it a few times. We've called it the levels of success, and then we're like, that's not really what it is, because it's like success is like whatever. Honestly, we're talking about like divine union, right? Like emotional. Yeah, I was gonna say like liberation. It's at a certain point, success. We were joking, success is mid, and like we don't even care about that anymore. It's more about like just being in this place of like flow and self-healing and healing with others, and influencing the world in a positive way. So if you're curious about this, I have this chart. It's going to be all over my social media, so check out my Instagram page. But it's called the Energetics of Overflow, and I've literally spent years developing this kind of energetic emotional map. Oh, Erin's pulling it up. Cool for the folks that are watching the video of this.
Watch
But
this
again,
on
if you're
YouTube, everyone.
if you're listening to this via podcast, via audio, you'll be able to look this up on our social media, and on the Easeful Uplevel as well. But I always emphasize to people, because if you look at the chart, there's like a hierarchy. The bottom is shame. I'm gonna list it out real quick. Bottom is shame, and then goes to apathy, disappointment, sadness, anxiety, frustration, comparison, proving, courage, curiosity, openness, acceptance, gratitude, peace, joy, love, and then at the top is flow and divine union. So it looks like, okay, well, clear, and then there's results, or kind of behavioral states and actions that come out of those emotions that tend to kind of manifest in real time, kind of your experience here, right? So we really do influence our world way more than we realize, and things really do get mirrored back to us depending on our energetic state. All you have to do is play around with this concept for a week, and you'll see it happen in real time. But some, people could argue, okay, like, well, sadness, like there's a place for sadness, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I bawl my eyes out like at least once a week, right? About something. And it's really important that I do that, right? And that I feel whatever that I'm feeling, and register what that is. The goal with this, though, is to have the ability to shift at will, right? So I think that it's really nice to feel the feelings and like really feel them, and I think even with something like grief or sadness, like if you actually let yourself cry or do whatever it is that's like that catharsis for you, usually you do get to this place of almost completion of like, okay, like I really let it out, right? Or you can tell if like, oh, I still got a little more to go, I still need to give myself another 5 minutes or an hour or something to really let myself like get this out of my system, or anger, it could be like whatever. But it is interesting how it's just the intention of shifting. I would rather be feeling or thinking in this way, like gratitude. I really would like to be in a gratitude space. Just the intention of doing so already shifts you there, right? And then you spend 5 minutes listing out your gratitudes. Gratitude is like really close to the top of this chart, and it's the tipping point into where you get into this like the synchronicities, and all of a sudden the universe is like blessing you with things that you're like, I feel like I didn't even do anything for this. Where did this come from? And there's all this magic that happens when we get into these kind of more like light and buoyant and powerfully energetic states, like peace and joy and love, like big love. In divine union, it's just and they do just kind of flow into each other. But in terms of if you're feeling particularly wounded, right now, or like feeling in shame, like also this is a really common thing. The crazy thing is with all of my high achievers that shame is huge for a lot of them. Like they toggle between shame and proving because they have childhood experiences or past traumas or whatever, or something that made them feel like they've never been quite enough and that they always need to prove their worthiness. And that comes deeply from a place of shame, even if they appear to be extremely confident and are confident in some ways. But I think there's just something so beautiful about the ability to shift,
Yeah.
and to take the time to shift, but I think all of that requires a certain level of acknowledgement. And I know I'm like dominating this conversation right now, but I just say one more thing before it leaves my little ADHD brain. I was listening to something this morning. I think it was like Esther Hicks or something. I don't know. As I'm driving to yoga early morning, I always like to listen to these like really thought-provoking like YouTube shorts. But they were saying, you know, like ideally every morning you want to tap into divine source, like carve out the time, no matter how you feel, like what you were saying. God, what do I need? What's the message? What am I supposed to do today? Or let me just get quiet and like open myself up to even feeling divine love, or like let me tap into source, because that's the wisest source that there is, right? God, whatever you call it, we call it God. You can call it whatever language you want to call it, right? But it's interesting that they had said, you know, if you feel like you're in alignment with divine will and you feel like you're getting these spontaneous like desires and ideas or whatever, like run with it, and you can feel the alignment clicking together and there's synchronicity. And then every so often you feel off, or you feel wonky, or you feel the disconnect. And weirdly, sometimes like really productive people are like, ooh, I feel like I'm out of alignment, so let me hustle harder right now to get back into alignment. Or like, I don't know, whereas it's actually better to be still in that moment, like get quiet so that you can tap back into source, not go like chasing off some weird ego rabbit hole, or like you don't even have to chase after like divine connection. You just have to like rest, like take a nap and then get quiet, right? And then be like in surrender, kind of, right? It's like be still for a minute and then like wait for that next impulse, right? If you really want to make sure it's a divine one, or one that's your higher purpose. And I thought that was so profound. I was like, girl, because I've been known to go chasing a rabbit hole. I'm stressed, I'm out of alignment, so let me go like scurry all over doing all the things. Like, what am I doing?
Don't I know it? Well, and that is also something I did yesterday. So with my job as marketing advisor, I'm often very deeply entrenched in other people's businesses and in the energy of other people's businesses. Mm-hmm. So as also a business owner, that can be very disorienting, because I get into someone's business and I see the vision so deeply and I understand how they want to talk about it. And it's kind of like the personality of that business like takes me over whenever I'm working in different stages of other people's businesses. So for me, honestly, like I finished up a project and I had to literally just give myself 2 hours of silence in order to get back into my own energy, my own thoughts, remember what I'm here to do, remember my mission. And I share that because I think that's a common occurrence, especially with a lot of us highly sensitive feelers, a lot of the empaths out there. We can feel emotions so intensely that we might not know if they're ours or someone else's emotion. And so I love that you just, I swear you're in my head, that you mentioned to take time out and silence. And I found so much value yesterday in disconnecting. I didn't frankly get all the work I wanted to get done yesterday, but taking the 2 hours of me time was incredibly needed, because then that motivation came back. I remembered my mission. I remembered what I'm wanting to speak on, what I'm wanting to do, who I'm wanting to support, who I'm wanting to help. I think it was important too to mention how I used that time. Like I wasn't just like sitting watching television or sitting in a dark room. You could sit in a dark room, but for me, what I needed was to get out into sunshine. So I literally tried to get as much sun on my body as I could. I got in a workout. So I was like kind of clearing my head, clearing away some of that brain fog, getting the dopamine up, all of that. And then I started, to write and to really take the time away from the screen in order to kind of recenter and refocus myself. So,
dude, I swear we do the same things at the same time. Literally yesterday I was craving the same thing, so I was like, I'm gonna go mow the lawn because it needed to be mowed. And I did so barefoot though, and my like neighbors are looking at me crazy because I'm like kicking off my shoes and my socks or whatever, so that I can like connect my feet to the ground and touch literal grass, right? Because I was like, I need to be in the sun right now, touching grass for the next hour, and like listen to something really inspiring while I do it. Yeah, well, and it's funny because like Erin, you and I had like a really good conversation yesterday, which it's funny when we kind of have our conversations here or even like, not recorded, we have our own personal podcast that happens in voice notes on our phones, just back and forth. But I feel like we do get into these like channeling moments where sometimes like I'll say something and I'll be like, wow, that's really profound. Where did that come from? Like, oh, I needed that piece of advice too. But this is one that keeps coming up again and again, and has for about the last month or so, which is like lost people shouldn't lead, even though they want to. And like if you're striving to be at a like a very balanced, peaceful, God-centered energy, like when you feel someone who's really like just in a rough spot, right? Like they're just like in crisis mode, like panicking. It's interesting how often, like as they're grabbing at straws or grasping at straws or like, trying to get their bearings, that a lot of times I've noticed this where they'll be like, come get on my level. I want to feel seen and heard and all these things, but I require you to come panic with me. And if you don't panic with me, you don't care, or something, right? Like I've seen people get like, because I've even seen this happening even right now with like some of the weather stuff going on, like hurricane stuff, which I don't, that's scary, right? So all of that's valid, but there's also a certain point where do we need more people panicking or do we need
Yeah.
more people like
Do we need all of the
preparing, right?
Yeah, do we need all the meteorologists on television crying and then citing global warming as the issue and then also trying to make it a political thing? Like, no, we need you to share. Sorry, there's a viral social media clip that's like this meteorologist crying.
Oh, I've seen it.
Like,
I know.
yeah,
Well,
have you
there's all
seen
this
that
like
from
panic
ABC?
baiting.
It's like,
which
no, we need the information. Like, we are trying to protect ourselves. I actually have a lot of family in Florida, so they're actually evacuated, thank God. But it's like, do your job. Like, your job is to be giving the information, and then people can then take that information and protect themselves. And I think sometimes, as you're mentioning, we forget our jobs, because part of being a leader is also to know your role and know your job. And I don't think
to
that
not incite panic too.
not incite panic. And sometimes I think everyone in our media probably needs this chart, because if you're sitting in a place where you're like, well, I'm in a position of leadership because I have an audience, but I'm not able to support myself the way I need to in order to deliver that information. Maybe I am like really stuck in this place of anxiety or sadness. I'm not able to perform my job. And so I think having tools to be able to do that, to get yourself into a place of, say, courage to share the information. Like, what do I need to do? What is my toolkit to get from anxiety and sadness? Because it is a real human emotion. But your job in that place as a leader is that you need to be in a place of courage and maybe even curiosity to do some research and deliver the information that needs to be delivered, because people are depending on you. They need to get themselves to safety.
Or peace even, which is like so hard in the face of crisis to be peaceful. But I actually think that's what leaders need to be, because this is my thought with it too. I understand if they were like either they lost control or whatever and needed to do more of their own work to not let the anxiety overcome them, or if they were like using it to leverage, like to try to motivate people to act. I know sometimes people are like, if I scare you enough, right, maybe you'll evacuate. But here's the hard thing is, I've been hearing all these things about now it's impossible to evacuate because like, the highways are backlogged and all these things. And so there's some people who have no choice but to shelter in place. And for those people to be put in such a state of panic when they don't know, it might totally miss their neighborhood. It might not. Either way, like they almost need to come to a place of like, I am ready to act and do what needs to be done and not panic. Because my other thought is like, who knows, when people are like in a panic state, like they could be doing all sorts of wild stuff, like to their homes, or you know what I mean? Like they could just do some stuff that's not necessary, or they could be screaming at their spouse in front while their children are crying, or like, you know what I mean? Like it could be like all of this trauma that may or may not be necessary, right, for their particular situation. And then if God forbid something does happen to them, you still want them to be in this like state of like, I'm ready to go help my neighbor as soon as I like, and I'm not this like panicked raw piece like thing of nerves. It's almost more like, we got to come together, check on your loved ones, fill your bathtubs up with fresh water. You know what I mean? Like, here's your checklist. You got this. Go. Right? Like that. I feel like that's the energy that leaders need to have. You need to know where you're leading people. And again, lost people shouldn't lead. If you're feeling lost, then it's not your time for leadership. It's your time to go and introspect and get yourself, like, know where you are now and get yourself in a better place, right? Like, I think it's so important.
It's so important. And I think also, we said, okay, we spent 2 hours of silence, like recentering ourselves. Like that's because we didn't know where we were going. We couldn't remember. And I think that is a very natural thing, especially for entrepreneurs. You're going to hit that stage where you can't remember what you knew yesterday. And it's constantly getting yourself back. And I think it's a normal thing to expect. And so knowing how to support yourself and again, get back into that heart space where you are able to support yourself. I think that's why the heart is such a powerful center. And that's where I'm like, let's use this more, because there's so much that it can do in order to click your mind back on into this place it needs to be in order to be affected. I do think we also need to be careful with what we consume. And we just were kind of talking about that meteorologist who was like taking it to the next level. And I think that's a very common tactic, unfortunately, in weather, is to like scare people.
Yeah, exactly. Clickbait a little bit. Yeah.
All of that. But also for us, like as highly sensitive people, we need to know that maybe limiting some of that exposure is helpful, just kind of getting the facts and then moving on, being able to self-govern and understand when we might be being emotionally manipulated. We are big feelers. I even had someone tell me, like, it was Jamie, when we were getting our auras, she told me, you're highly empathic, don't watch the news.
Yeah.
And I actually do. I mean, I try to stay up on what's going on in the world, but there is also a place where I've been putting more boundaries in place. Like my husband, he likes to watch a lot of news and things like that. And I've literally had to tell him, like, I actually need a break, or I can't consume all of this information. Or if you're going to consume this, I'm going to go someplace else. So I've had to put boundaries in place for myself in order to be able to.
I literally did that today.
Survive.
I told Erin, I was like, don't send me another TikTok of the birds warning the people or whatever, all this ominous crap. I'm like, because my philosophy with this is, if I'm not going to go do something about it right now, there is no reason for me to hijack my nervous system, because now I can't be a good mom, and now I can't be like things that actually matter and like productive and help the people that I can help. Like, why do I need to spiral about something way over there? And some people might be like, oh, is that callous? But no, I mean, I think it's productive. And at the same time, my thought is too, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And it's interesting, we're recording this on a Wednesday. The storm's supposed to hit tomorrow, and we'll see, the aftermath. It could be nothing. It could be absolutely catastrophic. And my thought though is then, like, I almost want to see what happens first, rather than getting the anxiety of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We don't know. So I'm going to focus on everything here. And then absolutely, depending on what happens, then I'll get in the mindset of, how can I help? Where do I go? What do people need? Right? Like, I think that's the more productive thing to do. Like, there's just no reason to spiral in anxiety ever, honestly, especially in a crisis. That's like the worst time to spiral in anxiety. So we do have this weird cultural thing where it's like, I think sometimes even people, when they get anxious about each other, I don't know, they're like, this shows that I care. I'm like, I think there's other ways to show that you powerfully care. Like, that just shows you have a really dysregulated nervous system, like, to me, at a certain point, right? Like, and it's normal to be anxious, but to like really lean into it and try to get other people like on the bandwagon of like unhinged anxiety with you, I'm like, I'm not having it.
That's like a very common thing too in the coaching space. So I notice a lot of coaches who are motivating from a place of either anxiety or proving energy, or they're preying
or
on
shame.
like,
You're messing it up.
Frustrations. Even really well-meaning ones will be stuck in this place of like the purple part on this chart and not ever getting up to like the yellow part, which is like the flow, the love, the synergy, the peace. They're all like within this purple space, which is very constricting, but it's also very convenient, because if you have a population of students who are in that proving comparison frustration, it's very easy to manipulate and kind of like do, profit off of some of that, some of those feelings of like, am I enough? How do I get to be enough? Like, if I just do this one method, then finally I'll feel like I'm successful. And I don't think it's a place of, I think a lot of coaches don't realize that they're doing this, but it's something I see on the internet like all the time. And I actually I get really affected by it too, because I'm someone who has a tendency to default to the proving energy because I'm a people pleaser and I'm a high achiever. And I do have many memories of authority figures telling me that I wasn't enough, right? And so my little childhood brain was always trying to figure out, how could I be enough? How could I make this person happy? How could I make this situation better? So I actually really have a very susceptible brain to that type of marketing that is literally picking in on, well, your business isn't going to be successful unless you do these things, or I know the secrets to making 10K a month, or the list goes on. But I just noticed that deeply because I get so affected by it. So I think another tactic I've used is just like not only controlling the media in terms of what's on the TV, but also with my social media feed. I really kick out people, even if they're well-meaning, even if they're truly going from a place of helpfulness, but they just don't necessarily have this chart to educate themselves on the power of divine union and flow. Like, I actually do mute them or kick them out or block them or whatnot, because I'm so susceptible.
It's so funny because it's like there's two high level business owners that I've followed for a while on Facebook that I like. It's probably time that I unsubscribe for them, but they're so entertaining. Like, they definitely have like the engagement thing because they're outrageous is really what they are. But it's interesting that the thing that they're very confident people, but it's not a divine confidence. It's definitely it's actually that comparison proving energy that's done in a way that's like where you're like, wow, I really am impressed by you. But they're also putting down their competition. I don't know what's so hard for you guys. I'm over here just killing it and being amazing while there's all these other people doing this dumb stuff out here. And it's like interesting because it's like, it's people straight talking in a way that you're like, wow, this is novel. And but it is interesting of like when you read it, there is this tinge of the energetics. You can just feel it where there's an ick to it. Right. And it's interesting. Whereas like when I've read posts from people that are up in that like peace, love, joy, or divine union state, you can tell when someone's written a post from a divine union, like you feel like you're floating up out of your chair. Like it transmits. People have this experience with, I know like a lot of books, like I know Eckhart Tolle's books have been wildly popular because, he gets into this channeled state. There's lots of books, right? Or scriptures that people read that they're like, there's some kind of energetic transmission coming from these words. And I think that's really important, which you don't get from AI, by the way, because I don't know how AI can connect to spirit. Maybe one day it'll figure it out. It'll gain consciousness and then we can all freak out. But no, kidding. Nobody freak out about anything. But
we just covered that. We were telling.
I know. We literally just come out. That's totally a joke. We're not freaking out about it. But no, but it's just really, really an interesting thing to trust, even though the world is very much about this whole proving thing, the rat race, right? I mean, I think that's just very much the culture. And to get to a place of like, that doesn't matter anymore. Let me tap into divine will. What am I supposed to be doing today? Like when I did that this morning, it was great actually. I had this whole busy to-do list, of like all these things I needed to do for my business to be successful. And then Spirit was just basically like, all you really need to do is like tap in for 5 to 10 minutes to divine source, post what comes through on social media once a day. Just take 10 minutes to do that for your business. And then focus on doing one thing to improve your life every day. Like 1% little tweak around the house or, or internally or something. That's it. And then relax and have fun. And I was like, oh, really? That's it? It seems too easy. But the funny thing is the more that I do that kind of thing, yeah, it's interesting how things open up and that co-creation starts to happen where I'm not doing all the work. It's like I'm doing half the work and the universe is doing the other half.
Yeah, they meet
That's
you
really
halfway.
nice.
There's other hearts that I kind of have identified, and I don't know if we have time to go through
Let's do
all of
it.
them. Do you want to
But
do a
yeah,
few of them? Okay.
let's do a
So
few of
the
them.
other one that is next, and I think this, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But girl, that chart is everything. That chart is everything.
I'm feeling
love
it,
it so
guys. I
much.
channeled that thing, and I probably shouldn't be so obsessed with my own work, but it's not really mine. It's the co-creation piece, right?
Yeah, and you utilized not only spiritual support from your divine union, but you also had other like research and
Oh yeah, like
collaborators to
literally
back it
10
up.
years of like looking at
Yeah.
like everybody else who's done this kind of work, definitely highly influenced by Dr. David Hawkins from like the 70s, this like psychedelic psychiatrist. I don't know, who's like into Zen meditation and stuff. I've like read deep into his work too. So yeah, I did not come up with this alone, but I feel like it's something that people need to see right now. So
Yeah,
I
it's
appreciate
so
you sharing
helpful.
that, Erin.
It's so helpful. It's changed my life, even just looking at that chart as someone. We're going to get to the other hearts, but one more thing on this topic is like, as someone who also had, I referenced earlier that I had a tendency to bypass or shut down my emotions, as someone who literally couldn't identify how she was feeling like several years ago, that chart on the right where it says like symptoms of, next to when you know what the emotion is, that was so helpful for me. So like being able to say, oh, I'm like in freeze mode right now, that's a symptom of, say, this proving energy that's overtaken me. Then I can make the connection between what my body's doing and what I'm feeling, and then kind of know the remedy. And a lot of times the remedy is, let me get into the heart space. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Easeful Uplevel. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. We will continue talking about the heart space in our next episode next week. We have a few more heart spaces that we wanted to cover, but we felt like this episode was getting a little lengthy, and so tune in next week to hear the rest of the conversation. If this conversation sparked a desire to go deeper into the heart space, we will be hosting a retreat in February of 2025, and we would love for you to join us. If you want to get on the wait list to be the first to register for the retreat, go to our social media page and sign up for our email list, and we will be sending out invitations within the next month. We hope that you will join us, and thank you again for supporting this podcast. We love this community. We love hearing from you, and we hope that you have the best week.